Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit Bits on Business and Finance with me. It's been a year since the ILFS fraud, the giant scam broke out, and it had sent shockwaves across India's banking, capital and finance markets. It's been review time for most of us. It was in September 2018 when it was clear that ILFS is not going to be able to repay its debts. That is when the government moved in quickly in order to stabilize the system. It disbanded the board of directors of ILFS and appointed a new board headed by Uday Kotak, the celebrated billionaire banker. Uday Kotak, of course, took charge with his team, and they also appointed a forensic auditor in order to investigate the scammy, fraudulent state of affairs of the ILFS group. At that point of time, all investigation agencies and regulators, including CBI, SFIO, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Income Tax Department, RBI and SEBI, they also got into investigation mode because this was a giant scam with amounts involved exceeding 1,30,000 crores. The findings of these agencies were soon very clear that it was a blatant fraud. It was a blatant cheating case. Investigation continues because according to us, we have still not come to the bottom of the story. But in the meanwhile, based on these findings, prosecution penal action has commenced against the directors of ILFS, its auditors, and even its independent directors, all of whom were found to have failed collectively. The situation for the lenders to ILFS group, which includes banks, institutions, mutual funds, gratuity funds, PF funds, pension funds, etc., their situation is grim, and at the most, they will recover a small fraction of their dues from sale of assets of ILFS. As per these probes which are going on, it has been clear that the mastermind of the ILFS scam has been Ravi Parthasarathy, who fled from India last year, middle of last year, and is said to be in London undergoing medical treatment. The curiosity that is there to us is that how did one single individual with his band of loyal, devoted team and followers manage to perpetrate this huge scam financial fraud in India? And for that, we need to get into a bit of the history of ILFS. ILFS was set up in 1987 by the late M.J. Ferwani, who was the chairman of UTI, and thus that explains why the initial shareholders of ILFS were Central Bank of India, UTI and HDFC. Because of the support of these institutions who were its shareholders, ILFS soon had ample money at its disposal, and as a company engaged in build-up and funding of infrastructure, it started bidding and bagging large ticket infrastructure projects in the country. Looking to the scale of its operations and the kind of projects it was undertaking, very soon LIC came on board as a major shareholder. So did Mitsubishi through Oryx Corporation, and so did State Bank of India. As of today, the largest shareholders of ILFS are LIC and Oryx Corporation, each holding 23.5% of its equity. It was not all hunky-dory for ILFS. It actually soon started incurring losses. But then, Ravi Parthasarathy and his team very cleverly and easily hid those losses. What enabled them to hide these losses was because they very clearly and craftily formed innumerable hundreds of subsidiaries and joint ventures in which turnover and funds were rotated in such a manner that you could not come to know the truth. So they formed a web of over 345 subsidiaries in India and abroad, spanning from Spain to China. So the first thing they did was to hide the truth in subsidiaries. And the second is, because of its institutional shareholders and the kind of reputation it built around itself, it was always able to raise funds in order to hide cash flow mismatches and in order to hide or prevent any kind of a default in its repayments. That continued for quite some time. But in 2013, when ILFS Group prepared its first consolidated financial statements, to any discerning person, it was very clear that its financial position was weak, its net owned funds were negative, it did not have profits, and it was not what it was being shown to be. And surprisingly, none of these institutional shareholders and lenders even raised any kind of an objection to this pathetic state of finances of ILFS, which was evident in 2013 itself. And that is where we need to understand how was it done. According to us, Ravi Parthasarathy very consciously, craftily, and very cunningly created a false image about ILFS being a government entity, or what many thought it was a quasi-government entity. And that is because of the pedigree of shareholders it had, with LIC being its largest Indian shareholder. This really helped ILFS and Ravi Parthasarathy in perpetrating this fraud. Because when you rate an entity, when you rate a borrower to be a kind of a government entity or a quasi-government entity, your perception of risk is very low. Even if you think that the entity will default, you will always think that the government will step in to prevent the default, because that is what the implication is of a company being owned by the government of India. It was this that he used to the hilt. It was because of this that funds kept coming to ILFS whenever it needed in large quantities, such that today its total outstanding dues is over 1,30,000 crores. It was because of these funds that it was able to keep taking large and large projects, and Ravi Parthasarathy was known to hobnob with all the most powerful persons, whether in politics, bureaucracy, banking, or financial institutions. It is this that helped him to network. It is this that helped ILFS to create a huge, dependable, trustworthy facade for itself, despite the fact that the reality was something else. So this quasi-government or government entity image that was cultivated about ILFS, according to us, is what perpetrated this entire scam and fraud. And then, what helped Ravi Parthasarathy further was, because of this image that was created about ILFS, as I said, he was able to hobnob with all those who mattered. Thus, they were able to get well-known retired senior bankers and bureaucrats to be independent directors on the board of various companies of ILFS. Soon, big names were associated with it. With those big names also came big auditors. Those big auditors, they came with their market reputation, again willing to be part of the gang. All these retired bankers, according to us, were only too happy to join the gang and were happy that their services were being used by the ILFS. And what were those services? They were actually being mute witness who never ever objected to all that was going on. Perhaps they were so enamored by what was going on that they were not even willing to believe the truth that they must have seen. So, using this cloud came independent directors who were trophy directors, came auditors who were such, and also came rating agencies. And in doing all this, sources say that Ravi Parthasarathy ran a tight ship. He bullied his employees. He ensured that he dominated over all of them. They had fear. They were scared of him. And resultantly, none of them ever objected to what was going on and were willing party to all that was happening. Reports say that Ravi Parthasarathy was known to bully, hound his adversaries, including resorting to bogus criminal cases in order to harass them and ensure that nothing is leaked out. That is how they say even the media was threatened, and the entire system, right from directors, rating agencies, auditors, consultants, media, and regulators, they all kept quiet. And that is where this entire false image of being a quasi-government or a government entity was played to the hilt by Ravi Parthasarathy and his close band of associates. If you look at ILFS, it was a giant fraud which went on for decades, and yet it continued. It continued because under this image and under the advantage of networking and hobnobbing that Ravi Parthasarathy took of it, No auditor ever issued an adverse report. No rating agency issued an adverse report. No senior employee or even a junior employee turned out to be a whistleblower who was willing to leak the scammy state of affairs. No media ever issued an adverse report, and the regulator also never really objected to what was happening or perhaps was negligent. So, what appears to us, or probably there are two reasons why all of these agencies and authorities colluded or were negligent in this scam. The first one, as I said, was they believed that ILFS was a government or a quasi-government entity and the chances of failure or risk were pretty low or zero. The other one that could be, which we think is very likely, is with this kind of a clout that Ravi Parthasarathy had acquired, it was certainly very easy to ensure that Delhi gave instructions to all those who matter to Ravi Parthasarathy to perpetrate this entire false facade, false entity that he created, and it continued. It continued till the time it could not be saved by any of its institutional investors, and they did not bail out when the default took place. But one question of ours which remains unanswered is, institutional investors like LIC, State Bank of India, HDFC, Central Bank and Orix have been the shareholders of ILFS. It was not difficult for them to fathom this fraud very easily. There were abundant signs to those professionals who represented these institutions on the board of directors and committees of ILFS. The question to us that remains is, why did they remain silent? Why did they really remain silent in 2013 when it was very clear that ILFS has a fraudulent state of affairs with an imminent default? And if they had acted at that point of time, it would not have been a fraud of 1,30,000 crores, but certainly a small part of it. Today, all lenders are languishing. All lenders see imminent losses that they will incur because the best estimate is that lenders will be able to recover just about 40% of their exposure to ILFS, and pertinently, none of them have been paid so far. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.